From the DMI News Centre, this is Emirates News with Ramia Faraj.
Hello and welcome to Emirates News, broadcasting from Dubai. I'm Ramia Faraj. The headlines tonight. The President approves a decree granting paid paternity leave to male employees in the private sector. Schools reopen across Dubai with stringent safety guidelines in place, including social distancing, temperature checks, and frequent sanitizing.
I'm Greg Fairley in the business tonight. UAE ranks first among GCC countries in economic diversification on the back of geographical proximity, few barriers to trade, and a diversified economic structure in manufacturing.
And I'm Graham Clues. And in the sport, UAE Team Emirates achieve a cycling milestone at the Tour de France. Alexander Kristoff wins stage one of the famous event and claims the UAE team's first ever yellow jersey.
President His Highness Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan has approved a decree granting a paid paternity leave to male employees in the private sector to care for their children. The decree, which has made the UAE the first Arab country to grant private sector employees paternity leave, aims to strengthen the country's leadership, reinforce its competitiveness in the areas of gender balance, achieve family stability and cohesion, and encourage young people to work in the private sector as paternity leave becomes one of the advantages offered by the private sector. The decree stipulates that the private sector employee is entitled to 5 days of paid paternity leave to care for his child, which could be taken any time within 6 months of the child's birthday. Schools across Dubai reopened today. The return to school is an important and a welcome step, especially during the pandemic. Amal Al-Jabri shared the experience with a local school to get a better understanding of the precautionary measures in place to keep children safe and happy.
Back to school is a phrase we're all familiar with. And amidst the current global pandemic, it's still that crucial time for students, faculty and parents to prepare for the new academic year.
What is very reassuring is that a country like UAE and a city like Dubai is really geared up to face the nature of the pandemic in its most pragmatic sense, and to receive students in the most safest and in the utmost reassuring manner. So that is, I think, for us a great leap.
To avoid spreading COVID-19, the UAE Ministry of Education announced the early start of spring vacation for schools and of distance learning, with the closure enforced since 4th March. Much to the delight of students and faculty alike, schools are reopening across Dubai starting from today. But what does a return to school look like during the COVID-19 pandemic? Moreover, what should parents in particular need to know to feel assured about schools reopening in the age of coronavirus?
Two key words will continue to refrain every time and every moment of the day, which would be social distancing and have your masks on. But I think these are just the first two nascent steps towards all of the very big measures that are in place in school. So right from thermal imaging cameras that check the temperature of every student and every staff member who is walking in, to the classroom setup, which promotes social distancing, to the arrangements in the all the facilities that the students would use, be it the washrooms or be it the common areas, to the entire curriculum, which has been revamped to support students to achieve their best in this setup.
In addition to the precautionary measures strictly implemented throughout schools, students have the option of studying in school or online. Each school organizes their on-campus and homeschool schedules independently.
Parents have an option of choosing one of 3 modules. On-site meaning 5 days, 3 days meaning blended, and then you have the remote learning which continues. So in my section in the secondary, we've had almost 50% of the class willing to come in at least 3 days a week. That's a very reassuring number for us. What that tells us is, one, the parents have that level of faith and trust in us. The second is, in the secondary, when you're in the last 4 years of your schooling before you move into college, the most important thing is to make the most of opportunities at school.
First day back in the classroom, students wholeheartedly revealed their preference for the traditional way of learning.
It felt really weird because I'm very used to going outside and I'm used to writing in a notebook, but now I have to type.
When they told that the schools are opening, I felt very happy and excited, and so I don't need to stay in one place anymore, and the physical class, it just feels great. It's just a different experience.
While schools and parents welcomed the decision by the KHDA to reopen today, continual change with the times require us to also continuously adapt.
The word that I'm using these days is a different normal. So a normal, there is never a normal anymore. Times are changing. We have to adapt. We have to continuously adapt, and we have to rise up to the situation.
As Sheikh Maktoum once said, it is failure and challenges that builds nation and men. And the school's vision strongly stands by that. And for everyone who stepped out, kept to the guidelines, maintained safety for themselves and for the students, I think this country holds great promise. And what visionary leaders does it really have, both the school as well as the country?
When faced with the pandemic, it was a natural step that policymakers took to close schools to try and slow or prevent transmission. But authorities are working hard and making sure that students do not have their education disrupted. And since masks, hand sanitizer and laptops have replaced books and lunchboxes as must-have items for the class, back-to-school season is surely hitting differently in 2020. Amal Al-Jabri, Emirates News.
Well, parents, students, and all staff members in Dubai's private schools now have a dedicated 24/7 back-to-school Dubai Health Authority helpline for COVID-19 related queries. The DHA says the service is there to provide people with timely and accurate health information. Officials say all government authorities and schools have worked tirelessly to ensure students are welcomed back with enhanced safety protocols. The helpline is a way to provide all stakeholders, including parents, students, and school staff, with timely information. Last week, the DHA organized a workshop in the presence of 400 medical and admin staff, which focused on standards that school clinics need to adhere to. Working mothers who are Dubai or Abu Dhabi government employees will have the option to work from home if their children are studying via distance learning. Abu Dhabi Media Office says employees will be required to provide a letter from the school to show that their children have enrolled in distance learning for the first semester in order to be eligible to work from home. Over the weekend, the Federal Authority for Government Human Resources also announced that mothers with children in grades 6 and below or children of determination will be allowed to work from home. Officials say these employees will only be allowed to work from home if their job can be done remotely and doesn't negatively affect their organization. Meanwhile, female government employees in Sharjah with children in year 9 and below will be given 1 week's leave to help support their children with remote learning. As children return to school, transport chiefs have set out a series of strict measures governing school transportation. They detail the rules that must be followed by drivers, schools, and operators. The rules have been published by the Department of Municipalities and Transport and the Integrated Transport Centre, the entity responsible for operating public transport in the capital. The rules include ensuring that all drivers undergo a COVID-19 test every 14 days, while face masks and gloves must be worn. Physical distancing must be implemented on buses, and schools will be required to deploy more buses or increase the number of trips due to reduced capacities. Dubai Economy has started to conduct field visits to monitor prices and promotional campaigns in the local market. The visits, which started last Wednesday, will continue for another week. They aim to ensure market preparedness for the school season and avoid price manipulation. The campaign will cover major commercial centres and outlets selling school supplies and stationery across Dubai. Officials say consumers can also report any violations through the Dubai Consumer app or by visiting the consumerrights.ae website. Dubai marked its annual A Day Without Accidents. Today, the Dubai Police campaign coincides with the first day of the academic year and aims to ensure that the first day back is accident-free. Officials say it's been successful in the past 2 years, with 0 deaths and injuries reported in the city and a 50% reduction in the accident rate. This year, it was held under the slogan, "Together we can make Dubai's streets safer." Drivers were urged to abide by traffic laws, especially around school buses. To other news now, and the Indian mission in Dubai has launched a campaign to help citizens with expired visas to return home during the UAE's amnesty program, which has been extended until November 17th. Officials say the 2-month drive aims to assist applicants to obtain travel certificates so that they can board repatriation flights to India without paying any fines as per the amnesty guidelines. More than 600,000 Indian citizens have signed up to return home as part of the Vande Bharat mission, of which around 370,000 Indians have left the UAE since the repatriation flights began in May. The Ministry of Community Development has launched a platform to support people of determination and their families during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Khala platform will be run in cooperation with a similar network in Saudi Arabia under the supervision of the Ibtikar EduTech Solutions. It's been launched to coincide with the new academic year as part of a range of programs provided by the ministry to support people of determination. The platform will allow families to access educational and rehabilitation programs remotely. It will also develop and build individual educational and rehabilitation plans with the help of artificial intelligence algorithms. The UAE today announced 362 new cases of COVID-19. This brings the total number of cases here to nearly 70,000. The Ministry of Health and Prevention also announced 398 new recoveries, bringing that total to over 60,000. Also, 3 new fatalities linked to the virus were reported over the past 24 hours, taking the death toll in the UAE to 382. And global coronavirus cases crossed the 25 million mark today as India set a record for the highest single-day rise in cases, with more than 78,500 new cases reported there. The global death toll is fast approaching 850,000. Johns Hopkins University, which uses official government data, places the U.S. with the highest number of infections at close to 6 million cases and a death toll that surpassed 182,000. Brazil is next with more than 3.8 million cases and over 120,000 deaths. India now has over 3.5 million infections and more than 63,000 deaths. Russia is just under 1 million cases and close to 17,000 deaths. And Peru is now the 5th worst affected country, overtaking South Africa with more than 639,000 cases and over 28,000 deaths. The UAE sent a third aid plane over the weekend carrying 16.5 tons of medical supplies and testing kits to Kazakhstan. The aid will assist 16,000 medical professionals as they work to contain the virus. Officials say that over the past 5 months, the UAE has provided more than 50 tons of medical supplies to Kazakhstan, including 25 ventilators and various medical and preventative supplies. The aid has assisted more than 20,000 medical personnel directly. The UAE has responded to the COVID-19 crisis by providing close to 1,300 metric tons of aid to 108 countries so far, supporting more than 1.2 million medical professionals in the fight against the virus. And a UAE aid ship carrying food and school supplies has arrived at the port of Al Makalla in Yemen in support of the people of Hadramaut. The gesture comes as part of the UAE's sea relief bridges through the Emirates Red Crescent. The ERC has implemented a number of relief, development and health projects in support of Yemen and its people. The beneficiaries thank the UAE and the ERC for their continuous efforts in Yemen, having delivered thousands of tons of food and relief aid to ease their suffering. Back home, rainfall has been reported in several parts of the UAE over the past 24 hours, and there could be more on the way, as the National Center of Meteorology took to their Twitter account earlier saying they expect more rainfall in the coming days. Over the weekend, rain fell in several parts of the Emirates, including Fujairah, Sharjah and Dubai. Forecasts suggest the potential for rain and brisk winds until tomorrow, especially along northern coastal areas of the country. Okay, it's time for a short break, but stay with us here on Emirates News. Greg Fairley joins us with the business desk. And once again, the UAE is being touted as a diversified country, Greg.
It certainly is, Ramia. UAE ranks first among GCC countries in economic diversification, resulting from geographical proximity, few barriers to trade, and a diversified economic structure. That story and more coming up when we return.
How to greet people when respiratory symptoms are showing, such as cough or sneeze. Avoid handshake and suffice with verbal greeting. Don't greet with noses touching. Avoid kissing or hugging others.
Welcome back to Emirates News. Our top story tonight, the president has approved a decree granting paid paternity leave to male employees in the private sector. And it's time now for the business.
The UAE has ranked first among the GCC countries in terms of economic diversification and 16th globally for ease of doing business. That's according to a UBS global wealth study. The report evaluates the opportunities in the UAE, among other emerging markets, in the post-coronavirus pandemic era. UBS referred in its report that the global COVID-19 crisis has boosted localization, offering opportunities for emerging markets, including the UAE. Abu Dhabi-based investment company Waha Capital has launched a new income-focused Islamic fund, adding to its 3 existing funds within its asset management business. The new Waha Islamic Income Fund SP will invest in Sharia-compliant assets across the sukuk and equity markets and will have a global outreach for investments. The fund is to be open-ended and is expected to have a capacity in excess of $500 million. Students here in the UAE continue to try to make important decisions about their future career. Not an easy task, and made more difficult now by the global COVID-19 pandemic. Earlier, I spoke to a Dubai-based educational consultant, Vandana Mahajan, who outlined some useful advice for young people about to put their foot on the career ladder.
So Greg very rightly said that we've all gone through an uncertain almost few months in our lives, and nobody had planned for this. So my advice, especially to students, and I've been dealing with a lot of students and parents within UAE and outside of UAE who are studying or pursuing work opportunities outside of UAE and within UAE, that please weigh your pros and cons and look at the opportunities that this pandemic has created. My advice to parents, students, and also to counselors has been, let's think positively in this time that we have gone through. Let's look at our opportunities more creatively and see what the world has to hold for us. So there is some merit in saying that, we need to look at the opportunities now that are being created by this uncertainty, the pandemic and COVID-19 that we've all faced through. but we need to look at it positively and look at the opportunities that are there now for us. See, I think what we all are going through, one thing that has really stood out and that has helped all of us, whether it's our work, whether it's medical science, anything, it's technology. And digitalization is going to be at the forefront of every industry, every economy. So that is one thing we need to empower ourselves with. And every spectrum of our life, careers, corporates, education, technology is going to be key. So equip yourself with this tool in whatever shape or form and move ahead with the opportunities that you perceive.
Dubai College of Tourism, which is part of Dubai's Department of Tourism and Commerce Marketing, has just received accreditation for 8 of its core certificate and diploma programs from the world-renowned Institute of Hospitality, which is focused on the career development of tourism professionals worldwide, with many students in Dubai having recently received exam results which may determine where they attend college. DCT aims to support potential students who are interested in pursuing a tourism-related career. Sukuk issuance is expected to grow to $115 billion this year, despite the ongoing global pandemic. For one company, Millennium Information, who provide banking solutions for the growing Islamic banking sector, they have now just set up international operations in Internet City here in Dubai to serve the growing Sharia-compliant banking and finance sector. Global Islamic financial assets reached $2.5 trillion in 2018, of which Islamic banking assets represent 70%, or $1.72 trillion. The Bahrain International Air Show has been cancelled due to the coronavirus-induced challenges. Organisers said that the show, which was set to take place from November 18th until 20th, will now be held in the year 2022. The show, which is held once every 2 years, drew about 54,000 visitors and attracted around $5 billion worth of commitments and orders in 2018. Bahrain, one of the first GCC nations to impose movement restrictions, has had over 51,000 cases of COVID-19. Meanwhile, the next Dubai Air Show is scheduled to take place between 14th and 18th of November 2021 at DWC here in the UAE. And that is your business tonight, keeping you up to date. Now, back to Ramya.
Thanks, Greg. 3 stations on Dubai Metro's Red Line are being upgraded. The 3 stations are Dubai Internet City, Damac Properties and UAE Exchange. Work is well underway and is already 40% complete. The improvements of the stations and infrastructure aim to enhance the experience of pedestrians and cyclists, besides providing safe and smooth mobility for people of determination. The Dubai Internet City and UAE Exchange stations will get additional entrances, respectively, while the link to the Dubai Marina tram from the Damac Properties metro station will also be improved. The metro upgrades are part of a master plan with improvements to 40 metro and marine transport stations scheduled to be complete by 2025. You're watching Emirates News. Time for another break. But when we come back, it's the sport with Graham Clues and a lot of excitement surrounding this year's MENA Cup football tournament in Dubai, Clues.
It is, yeah. Organising it obviously is a bit tricky at the moment. It's supposed to take place early next year. We're going to have the tournament CEO who's going to tell us all about it. It sounds absolutely fantastic.
Wonderful.
OK, so coming up in the sport, we'll be talking to the organiser of next year's MENA Cup football tournament in Dubai. And UAE Team Emirates claim the win in the first stage of the Tour de France. OK, football first, and reigning Arabian Gulf League champions Sharjah have signed the player they hope will score the goals to help them retain their league title. Brazilian Jonatas de Jesus, seen here completing his medical exam, arrives from Elche in Spain's La Liga, where he scored 21 goals in 51 appearances. The 31-year-old striker has signed a 2-year deal with Sharjah after previously playing his club football in Spain, Italy and his native Brazil. Sharjah play their first league game of the new season on the 10th of September away at Fujairah. Meanwhile, a couple of their biggest rivals for the title played out a friendly match last night where Al Ain came out as 4-1 winners over Al Wahda. Now, Laba scored twice in 60 seconds early on in the first half for Al Ain, which left the opposition struggling to get back into the match. Fahad Hadid made it 3 on 70 minutes with this goal, which is a goal that Diego Maradona would have been proud himself to have scored. Now, after a raft of substitutions, Jamal Marouf got the final goal for Al Ain just before the game ended. Both clubs are in action this coming weekend in the first round of the Arabian Gulf Cup, with Al Ain at home against Khor Fakkan and Al Wahda also at home against Al Wasl. Now, early next year at the Jebel Ali Sports Centre, you'll be able to see some of the football stars of tomorrow in action as some of the best youth players from some of the biggest clubs in the world will gather to contest the MENA Cup. Now, here with me to explain more is the tournament CEO, Chris Brown. Chris, great to see you. You're a well-known face and a well-known voice, all things football in the UAE, but this is like a real passion of yours, this kind of event, isn't it? Getting some of the best players, young players from around the world, some of the best players already in the UAE, get them together and let's have a competition.
It is great. I mean, it's an aspiration of mine for some time. I came out to Dubai in 2004 after playing football in England, but this tournament's really going to bring together, as you say, some of the best players here and internationally. We've got teams from England, so we've got Leicester City, Middlesbrough, Stoke, confirmed letters, PSV Eindhoven from Holland, Club Bruges from Belgium, and we're speaking to Liverpool at the moment. We're hoping to get them, along with Rangers and Dundee from Scotland, and speaking to a number of teams over in Asia as well.
I'm sure you're going to get Watford coming over as well. But these are youth teams, aren't they? They go from about 12 till 16, 17?
Yes, so we've got 4 age brackets, the under-12s, the under-14s, 16s and 18s. The under-14s is for professional and national representative side, so we've got the Gambia national representative side, and we've got some professional clubs from Africa as well, a Nigerian side in the older age group.
Now, for you, obviously, this time, with everything that's going on, organising something like this comes with a lot of added complications. It's going to take place hopefully April, I think March next year, but obviously still you have to be quite flexible and you have to ask the clubs to be flexible as well.
We do, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of obviously restrictions in place at the moment. We're hoping that, in 7 months' time there'll be less restrictions for everyone. But obviously we're speaking to the Dubai Sports Council, we're speaking to the clubs themselves just to make sure that everything from a health and safety is in place.
And this is very much, I think a lot of people don't really compute the fact that these are the stars of tomorrow quite often, a lot of them, especially when you have clubs like Liverpool. I mean, they don't put wannabes in their youth teams. They put players that they really think could go all the way. So for football fans as well, this could be the chance to see the big names, for 4 or 5 years' time.
Yeah, I mean, this tournament is a tournament that we hope is going to be here for 25 years plus. So we hope that many of these players that have come through actually come back to the MENA Cup in 10, 15 years' time as ambassadors. Going off of my experiences of playing in things like the Milk Cup in Ireland, where, you've got the best of the best playing in those that have gone on to have huge international careers, and taking teams from the UAE to play in the big Scandinavian competitions like the Gothia Cup. It's just a fantastic... We want to create fantastic memories for these young players, and it'll be brilliant if they go on to have great careers as well.
And then afterwards, just quickly, before we have to wrap up, in 2021, what other things have you got coming? I know you often have clubs coming over and having their holidays and training as well. That's quite common for you, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. So we take care of the clubs from all around the world. For the Chinese Super League teams, we're hoping that they'll come back over in January and February, all being well. And then the Premiership teams, when the break, again in February, we work with a lot of players that come into the region, so whether it's a rehab or whether it's a break in their season, we're looking forward to to everything to return to some sort of normality, we hope.
Wonderful. We appreciate it, Chris. Thanks for coming in tonight. Good luck with the MENA Cup. We'll be tracking it, of course.
Thanks very much, Graham.
All right, on to cycling now, and UAE Team Emirates rider Alexander Kristoff got his team the perfect start to the Tour de France by winning the opening stage and claiming Team Emirates their first ever yellow jersey. The 33-year-old from Norway timed his finish to perfection in the 156-kilometre opening stage in Nice. Weather conditions did help Kristoff along the way, but he took full advantage to claim a first for UAE Team Emirates in the Tour de France. That is, this year, taking place 2 months later than it was originally scheduled. Golf in the final round of the UK Championship in the race to Dubai is nearing its conclusion now at the Belfry in England. Three-time Abu Dhabi Championship winner Martin Kaymer is among the leaders chasing this title tonight, where a win or a top 5 finish could see him into the top 10 in the race to Dubai standings. This event is the last of 6 consecutive events in the UK that were quickly arranged by the European Tour in the wake of the global pandemic. Next week, the race will move south for 3 weeks to the sunnier locations of Spain and Portugal. And finally, Formula One world champion Lewis Hamilton was one of many sports stars who led the tributes to actor Chadwick Boseman, who died yesterday after a 4-year battle with colon cancer. 43-year-old Boseman had taken on a variety of roles in recent years that portrayed real people from history, including singer James Brown and pioneering baseball star Jackie Brown. But he will be best remembered for his portrayal of Marvel's superhero Black Panther over the course of 4 different films. The Black Panther movie itself is considered a milestone in Hollywood, as it ranks as one of the top 15 highest-grossing films of all time. Following his qualifying win at the Belgian Grand Prix yesterday, Hamilton adopted the iconic Black Panther pose on top of his car as a tribute to the significance of Boseman's legacy.
I wanted it to be perfect today. I wanted it to show strength, and I wanted it to be honest. I wanted to be out front on my own. That's what I chose. So to make it significant, to make it important and impactful, because today is a special day, to be able to dedicate that to Chadwick. I feel very honoured to be able to do that.
Nice gesture. OK, that's your sport for tonight. Back to Ramia.
Thanks, Graham. And finally tonight, over the weekend, Jakarta held its first drive-in concert as COVID-19 infections surge across Indonesia. The 2-day event was held at a parking lot with more than 300 cars in attendance, and instead of applauding, the concert-goers honked and flashed their lights. Organizers say that precautionary measures were in place, along with attendees socially distanced in their vehicles. They hope that the new format will encourage more entertainment activities to resume in the country. Meanwhile, Indonesia reported its biggest rise in new COVID-19 infections for a 3rd successive day, taking the country's tally to around 170,000 cases and a death toll of over 7,000. Okay, and on that we end tonight's program. Follow us at Dubai One TV and at Emirates_News. Do continue to join us for our COVID-19 briefs throughout the day, as well as for our regular 7:30 p.m. bulletins. Thanks for watching, and good night.